Larry, could you? Right. Oh wait, here it goes. I was talking to some spirits there. No, my life would I'd been healthy enough the rest of my life had they not done this. And again, they'll try to put fear in you. Yeah, see, that's why I shouldn't do it. But there's nothing I could have done to stop them. They're again they're who I speak about, and they're affiliated with narcotics distribution and sex trafficking. But the question is there a nexus that can be used for prosecution? Right? Because they use spycraft to enriching the cops that are dirty. They may not even know their bosses. They just do whatever the thing tells them. And that is a physical thing also. They'll use coded language online. So when they do it, here's an example. This is just one example. When they do the dirty deed, when they commit the crime, when they go after the victim of the deep state, rarely, because that's what it is. But again, a deep state is Republican and Democrat, as you all know. They'll get something. So they could get a promotion. How that works is they already have dirty people in the government, and then they promote the person. And again, a lot of you were promoted maybe through that system, and you got to make choices whether you're going to be with the devils or you're going to be with God, whether you're going to commit crimes or you're going to actually do your job. Well, there's ways to get up. What happened to me is I was in a very dirty office. You know, that had probably not most likely, and probably get out of here, had links to CIA. And that's how they handle their problems. If they don't like somebody, they send the CIA and the contractors after them. Right. But what happens is they'll prepare you for that. They're assassinated. What happened is when I got in the Marshal Service, this Special Operations Group guy had just been assassinated. I actually took his place. So again, in their mind, they make the affiliation, and we'll do this guy, and we'll get rich in a couple of years or a few years or whatever, how many years it takes. This is green tea. They're running a sexualization machine, and they'll actually cause sex crime, sexualization. Again, it's not all sex crime; it's also sexualization. Again, I investigated it. I investigated the algorithms they use. Didn't know it was the algorithms when it started. They were doing it in the '90s, or they started in the '90s. Again, probably before the internet, they did it some other way, and they do it that way too. They do have physical people. So you'll find that a lot of these sex crime investigators they're corrupt. They're playing a game, enriching themselves. That's really what they're doing. And again, what they want to do is cause all the big people in law enforcement to have something in their history. And they say, well, our system protects you. That kind of thing. So they, have dossiers. There's no doubt the people in the State Department, what's that guy's name that just came out of the State Department? I mean, Rubio may have something too. I think Rubio does. I saw some blackmail of Rubio. It's nothing big, but right, I saw some blackmail extortion go on years ago. Well, because Rubio was one of the guys I used to communicate with when I was in Florida. Right. And I don't think I discovered it in Florida, but I think when I left Florida, I saw them. Because you'll watch how something happens, and you can tell that the person's extorted. But as far as Rubio, it's just kind of minor stuff. I didn't see anything to say that like he's got some sort of sexual thing that they're using. Right. But again, State Department looks like they're all compromised. Right. And it's a weird thing. It's just so bizarre. It's like in the '70s. Remember those movies where the corporate world was dirty, and this link between dirty government and corporate world, and, and they have artificial intelligence. It's actually that, as weird as it is. So what happens is when they leave the Justice Department, watch for the people that go to Walmart and places like that, because we live in Walmart, we live in Target. So what they'll do is they'll give credibility to the criminals that pretend to these big PIs, and they are PIs, and they do cases. That's how they get their credibility, but they're also, corrupt. So they're not really doing what they say they're doing. Right. In some cases, they say they just throw them into these things, like these big investigations, and they just hang out. And then when it's over, they have their name connected to it because they're not worth a shit as investigators. They're just corrupt people. So they'll put a case on somebody they're trying to extort. But they'll bring the investigators in. These people, like the DOJ people that go work for Walmart, they bring these corrupt investigators in and say they're good people. So they take the deep state issues from the government and they put it into Walmart. So you go to Walmart to shop, all of a sudden you're the bad guy, the same as it would be like working in the government when they do this. You've seen it before, assassination, a murder, right? And then they say I'm the bad guy, and they're the good, the corrupt people are the good people. If your store is kind of not like in some neighborhoods, I imagine the store could completely cooperate. When you go into the store, the people know, like early on in it, the people that work there know what it is, and they'll make faces at you because they're people; they're not corrupt. Or they'll come by shaking their head, yes. So again, there's been tons of people that were like, at least visual informants. They can't talk to you; they're not allowed to talk to you, right? But they were visual informants. I got to make sure my volume's up there. It looks pretty good there. Yeah, people just tell me stuff to show me stuff. Again, they don't tell me stuff as much anymore as they used to. Right? Now they just kind of walk by and give like facial gestures, nod their head, yep, like it's on. It's happening, believe it. So again, it's tragedy, but you all bring it on yourselves. Money causes these, money grubbiness causes these things to occur. Right? The Bible says so. So I'm definitely a voice that kept that helicopter going. They tried killing the Lakota, and I'm like, what? I was like, what are you doing that for? It's like when they tried killing the A-10, just makes no sense. Right? Because you know why? Because a bunch of them are deep state, and they're wired to our enemies, and our enemies like kill the A-10, kill the Lakota, and they'll get something for it if they listen to that voice or that inference. Could be physical too. Who knows? So I was part of the movement to keep the A-10, and I was part of the movement to keep the Lakota. I'm like, what are you doing? It's a perfect size helicopter for a lot of what we do. And so they eventually, I did it before 2022. So in 2022, they started, I guess, distributing an upgraded version and kept it. And if you see, I didn't even read that news article about it burning less fuel. I just knew it was. That V2L it's burning a ton of fuel. Right. And understand it was, just for that particular mission mostly. But so let's get down to the meat and potatoes. We need those Lakotas. Blackhawks are great too. Right. Well, the Border Patrol should actually be buying some of those Lakotas. Right. DHS should have some of those Lakotas. Right. They're just nice, compact, easy to find a place to land, burn less fuel. You can put a 4-man team or 4-person team, 4-man woman team in there pretty easy. It's like those Kiowas. The Kiowas are real small, and they're actually smaller, I think. And they used to just burn through the countryside, they do their observer missions and stuff. So, I mean, there's use for Blackhawks. I know you all have Blackhawks, but we should look into getting some of those Lakotas in there. And actually, that's what they designed it for. Right. That was their intended purpose, was those federal missions. But you notice there's none out there, right? Can you figure this out? You figure out what's going on? They send you to V2Ls and you don't have any Lakotas. And maybe you do, but I haven't seen any. So again, and also that search and rescue thing. Right? I'm not sure how much space is in the back and how it works, but I know they had some that looked like they opened up in the back, like an air ambulance kind of deal. So there's a lot of use for those on the border. Right? And then of course we reduce the operating costs. Maybe I'll get a blessing from Doge. I don't trust people that are pro-narcotics. I mean, because they get fanatic about it. I'll just tell you that. They won't talk about it, but they're trying to scumbag our efforts to stop narcotics. Again, they're trying to do the switch change. Like Elon's the law enforcement, safety and public safety and security guru, and we're just idiots that don't come to work. Meanwhile, you're spending 80 hours a week sometimes because you're so into your work, and it's not even on your pay paperwork some of the hours you work. Right. Now he's taking us down so he can be bigger, and he's pro narcotics. So, like, his will can mess up your work, so he can come along and look like the hero because he finds that your work's messed up, or you spend an extra $5 for something you shouldn't have spent it on, or spent on something because you can get it cheaper over here. And I'm a big, years. That's just the weird part. It's like he stole my persona. For years, I told you how you can get things cheaper. Right. Well, you actually have to. The weird part is when I was in the government, I could get it cheaper off the GSA schedule. Maybe Elon doesn't know what I'm talking about, but you all do, because he's the expert. His people are the expert. But GSA schedule, you're supposed to get a reduced price because the GSA buys bulk, right? I'd go in and buy like 10 of something and get a cheaper price. So the guy that I worked with said, you actually get it cheaper than the GSA schedule, because he said you could buy off a GSA schedule, but I'm giving it to you cheaper. So you probably don't want to. Well, because some fat rat deep state person in GSA made a deal with somebody, right? And then they get something. You see. Yeah, so what they do is these people that are these assassins in the government working for whoever will get big missions. But, I actually knew about that, but what I didn't know, I found out through a psychic kind of connection this morning, is some of them really don't do anything. They're just the same lazy person you've seen in your lifetime. And they go on these missions and they really can't do anything. They're just a face. And they stand there and then they write it up, this person's just so it gives them credibility against their victim. They tried to make the guy that was killing me bigger than me when I was just an everyday Joe. And I was in the government. They would say, this guy yelled at me one day. He'd been in longer than me, maybe even 10 years longer than me, but he's yelling at me. I've been in like 10 years or something in the Marshal Service, or just short of it. I guess 10 years ago, about 8 years in Marshal Service, 2 years in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and then I'd spent like 8 years in the Army. And he's yelling at me, going, "You're going to be an inspector someday." Like this is what I'm doing, and I'm somehow cheating everybody by being an inspector. And I just work hard. That's all I do. There was no effort to do anything like that, like to suck up to somebody. If I get a letter from a judge saying, you did a great job, it's not sucking up when you do your job. See, these people don't do their job. They sit at their desk. They would sit at their desk and go work out for a couple hours. Now, to their credit, the people that put that in there were the CIA type people. Everybody around me was being indoctrinated to hate me. They were othering me, as they called in that news article saying about the Palestinians. So they isolate you and they try to make you commit a sex crime, is what their favorite one is. That's for sure. But then, if they could, they'd make you commit a bank robbery, whatever they could get you to do. Right. But their favorite one is sex crime. They're just sickos, man. They're sicko devils. Like I said, the guy that did me, one of the biggest guys, not biggest guy, but one of the people that did it the most, another deputy, Rich Snyder, actually called him a devil. And I didn't know it was real, but he's a devil. And that's who the Marshal Service chose, a devil. Because why? Because they're devils. It's a scam, man. The whole investigation of sex crimes is a scam. To get to that point, the Marshal Service had to cause a sex crime in some of the deputies. Once they did that, they opened up that world to them and they got the task force, because they showed that they would put those cases on innocent people and then operate them in sex crime. I mean, they destroy a person's mind. If I didn't have God, my mind would have been destroyed. Then Bustamante, they took his life down. He ended up pawning a shotgun, and then he walked off into Mexico and was killed. In fact, I believe they watched him walk off into Mexico, and they called somebody to kill him. Now, of course, one of the border guys saw him, and I'm not saying it's that border guy, but it could be, I guess. But I think the border guy just happened along. But there were probably operators watching him. For all I know, it was his phone. Maybe he had a phone and he watched his GPS. That's the only reason you can't stop narcotics, because those people exist. That's the only reason. They work for narcotics distributors. And the thing is, they could be paid 10 years ago, and they don't get put into operation. Then they started putting into operation maybe 6 years ago. See how that works? Right. There's no nexus there, or a very difficult nexus. So people here had already been paid to do me probably 14 years ago when I started looking into Kansas City. What happened was I had gotten sick, and I think they do it. I mean, they definitely do it with stress and all that kind of shit. And not, if you have a wife and stuff like that, life is easier. And then they block my massage, all sorts of stuff. But I found the Unity Church. Again, some of you are more conservative. That's okay, but their prayer ministry is great. And I was thinking of traveling in that direction. So at that point, they would pick up, again, there's people already here, obviously, but they would pick up a specific operation against me and start paying people, showing them my photo, right? That kind of thing. So again, they use what we use for law enforcement for corruption. It's patterned after our operations, but again, they're pressuring people to commit crimes, pressuring people to hate on another person they want them to hate on them, that kind of thing. Again, it's KGB. They can't help you. Just remember that. Just send them packing. Don't call us. We'll call you. Bye. That's what you need to do. Otherwise, everything I help you with will fail. And everything you try to do will fail because it's already failed. So again, let's get some of those helicopters in there. It's nice that the Army heard me somehow, whether they read it or heard it in their mind. They kept those Lakotas going. And Border Patrol should have Lakotas. They're just a good helicopter to have, a great helicopter actually for what you do. Should have one of those assigned to Borstar. Great. It's considered an air ambulance or something like that. Again, when you're trying to get in there and it's on the side of a mountain or something, again, the Black Hawk's a little bit bigger and it's not as easy generally. Right? I mean, good pilots can do amazing things, but I would use Lakotas. So we need to increase Lakotas. Lakotas do have a shortcoming. I mean, because the Black Hawk's a little bit bigger and it's just, you get a little more space, I think. But I've never been in one, so I can't tell you for sure. But it just looked like the right size for everything we need. Again, if you're bringing spec out teams in there, those make more sense to me than anything else. I think the Little Bird's too small. I think the Black Hawk's a little too big. They make a great size for that. Well, again, if it escalates, you're definitely going to need special operators, but I recommend that they come in and look around. Right. Just have them poke around, and you're going to have to come up with a defense plan. So you might want to bring engineers in and stuff like that. So again, special operators, the Green Berets can help you with a lot of it. Right? A lot of them were combat engineers for some years, and then they transfer into special forces and stuff like that. So find some of those people. Well, we have to come up with a border defense plan if the cartel decides that they're going to do something. Right? And that border defense plan needs to, be gradiated. So, based upon threat. And at a certain point, you're going to start putting in a lot more fencing, a lot more obstacles. Right? That kind of, because it's insurgency, I don't know if the other obstacles make as much sense. You need heavy equipment down there. I didn't see any heavy equipment. You need to start digging around. And so I guess digging on the border, there's some rules or laws or something. I don't know. You have to be careful, I guess. You just want to increase your capability. So what you want to do is what Abbott's doing. Abbott's kind of ahead a little bit. Abbott, he finally built that base. He's building a base somewhere down there. Right. So you need to build your bases. You have your, I don't know what the Border Patrol facilities look like. It may not be big enough, may not be the right thing, but you may be able to piggyback on some of the Border Patrol facilities. But we need motor pools. right? They should have medical assistance. I don't know what the hospitals on the borders look like. You may have been able to increase the number of hospitals down there, but it can be sparse as far as I remember. Again, I haven't been down there in a long time, and haven't looked. Right. So medical care is important because you have to understand military people and not BOP, Border Patrol people. We need to. They need to be treated, and they need to be treated quick. Like if we can turn them around and put them back online, that'd be great. They shouldn't have to drive off to a hospital. I know you have that capability in a border patrol, but let's just increase that because we have increased number of people, right? And then if we get a surge, I know it's the same people that help treat the officer treats the detainee, right? So that we just don't want to overburden people. There's a lot of reasons for that, right? So we need to make that plan work. Start moving it. So you might want to build some National Guard bases or DoD bases down there. Again, a lot of stuff's prefab. Right? A lot of it you could just like a field base. You don't even have to put up the structure yet. Right? Again, medical facilities are very easy to build. They have them in storage. Right? Again, it's not only if an officer is shot that we have a trauma center that we can go directly to. That's like a U.S. Army trauma center that was constructed for the border operations, and we don't have to worry about these other people. We don't have to worry about getting to some other unaffiliated hospital. Right? Then we save money also. We don't have to pay those fees, right, at the hospital. Well, a lot of times, if you do that, you won't have to fight that battle because you've already taken care of it. Okay, so here's an example. So let's say I tell you to do all this, and you do it. The way the curse works, because you're going to come out the other side looking great and prepared, that curse will wear off a little bit. It won't have any. Now, if you don't do it and it's a mess, because that's how you remember the surges, how everything went crazy, right? That's from curses. And believe me, some of the people that are attacking me that look like they support you, that's the scam. They don't support you either. They support themselves. They want you to look bad, and then when it comes time, they'll make you, talk shit about you. Right. Well, if you think about it, the techies know where all of us are. Okay, our phones. It's maybe even some of our other equipment. For some reason, they're able to get narcotics past us. Again, that investigation, I don't know if it was conducted yet. Now, Google knows where you are, right? Somebody in Google could be working with narcotics distributors, bring that drug right past you because you're going to be like 2 minutes ahead of it or 2 minutes behind it. Right? Because they know exactly where the spot is where you're not. I'm not saying it's Google. It could be X. I don't know. And remember, these people are making money. That's all they're doing. Again, Elon wants to talk about you. You know what it's like to be in government unless you're corrupt, right? You don't get shit. Right. And he acts like it's the same thing, the same world that the H-1B guy. They talk about the H-1B not having money. That's only to a point. Then they get paid, right? So again, the H-1B program, as far as Bannon saying it's slavery, well, those people are people that were in H-1B. Again, the guy that runs Google may have been in H-1B 20 years ago. I don't know if he was born in the United States or not, or 30 years ago. So again, they eventually get paid, and they do their time. Like you did your time in the trenches. Elon comes in like he's the leader. He ain't never been part of that operation, and he's pro-narcotics. So again, we have concerns because now he's trying to take us down while he goes up. And that's a way to overcome our ability to stop narcotics. And again, we know Google was into sex trafficking. Right. Again, I think they may have cleaned up by now, but who knows? They just may hide it better. Thank you, Larry. So again, all of a sudden, they're the authority, right? It's the same scam as to why I think they killed Jonathan Luna. Right. because he was doing sex investigations or sex crime investigations. And probably caught some of their people, whoever they are. But again, whoever they are, they're all part of it. Again, we can lump it together as a deep state. And I caution the Trump administration not to take up deep state activity. Just caution you, okay? There is a God. And you do fly planes. But again, it's a tragedy. I tried to avert it by telling you not to do what the deep state, not to do what the narcotics distributor and the sex trafficker was convincing you to do here in Kansas. But Wichita was the first place in Kansas I started looking, and they were hitting me with the apartments, and I was trying to get into an apartment up in Wichita and get out of Oklahoma, and I just couldn't get to it. Again, there was a lot of operation going on, and it's not investigative. It's actually torture based upon previous tortures and things. Right? They're trying to cause you like a flashback or something like that. But it has nothing to do. Like they even spell it, and my mind starts going to different times in my life. And I said to God, I said, what is this? This is weird. There's nothing there. I said, yeah, but they believe their own bullshit. Like when you were like, my mind will pick up thoughts when I was in Naples, when I was over here, and when I was over there, and I'm like, why is this coming up? God says they're willing it. And I said, why? Because they believe their own bullshit. Like you committed a crime there, and you didn't. And you're like what comes up in my mind is me feeding somebody on the street, me giving somebody a $20 bill when they ask for money, that kind of thing. In their mind, it's going to come up some bullshit crime that I allegedly, quote unquote, committed. Right. They're Jussie Smollett's, but they're worse than Jussie Smollett because they point the finger and say that's the person. Jussie Smollett just simply said somebody did it. Right. He didn't say it's that person over there. That's why Jussie Smollett was never prosecuted, because we have people in government that are being paid, big dollars, people in private sector being paid big dollars that actually say that person's a criminal and they committed this crime. I mean, people working for, if Elon Musk wants to ruin somebody, that's part of what he uses. They put a fake case on somebody. Right. Again, we got a job to do. We've been doing this job a lot longer than these people have ever existed. We weren't paid millions of dollars to do it. Or to do anything, matter of fact. I mean, some of you made money in the market and maybe made it honest. Right. But it is what it is. So we got to keep going. This is where the rubber meets the road. Of course, somebody like Elon will be in there trying to look at us. Right. Trying to scumbag our operation. See, I don't even think he gets access to your budget. Because if he gets access to your budget, he's not cleared. I guess Trump could clear him. But if you have access to your budget, he can actually give information to people on what you're doing and how to get around your system. Like he'll know your capabilities. I mean, all of a sudden you build rockets, but you don't feed people. You don't stop drugs because it's too expensive. But we have entertainment of building rockets and blowing up and exploding rockets. So again, we came up through the ranks. We were dogged. We got shit on us. So he's going to get shit on him because he thinks it's nothing to have shit put on you and work these long hours. And I mean, it's bullshit. I mean, it's outright bullshit that only 6% of the federal workforce, this is actually their inference, that 6% of the federal workforce are the only people that don't spend 40 hours in their house, in their slippers and their robes. I mean, it's bullshit. If you spend 40 hours in the field, that's 40 hours you didn't spend in the office, and you're a lazy piece of shit. That's what he's actually saying. And in fact, the question is he trying to force us into the office and off the street? Are we going to be required to spend a certain number of hours in the office, no matter how many hours we spend on the street or on the border or wherever you are? Oh, believe me, they're sick people. They're sick people. Unscrupulous, sick people. The next thing you know, you got to run to your office and spend a few hours there every day because Elon wants you to. Who is he? Some fucking guy that raped the system? Some spy in a foreign country in Saudi Arabia gave him $5 billion. Some spy in Russia gives him another $10 billion. That's who he is. They did a psychological test on him. They figured they could use him. Can't use me. That's why I don't got nothing. Although I've helped Russia. I've helped them all. Right. I've helped Russia. Believe me, I healed fires in Russia, and they got them under control. Right. But again, I can only heal. Like back then, Russia wasn't as bad as it is now. Now it'd be a little more difficult for me to do it. Right. But again, hopefully Putin comes back to his senses and means what he said. Now, here we're the situation right now. Putin really said something that was positive. Hasn't said something like positive. Like I don't know if he's ever said anything positive like that. He could be lying. He's KGB. But the reality is he said it, and we can use it. But we haven't acted on it. So he's sitting over there. What's he supposed to do now? He's dumbfounded. Right? He's not trying to manipulate it. It's not manipulation when you're trying to get out of war. You can't look at it like that. Right? He's trying to get out of war. Zelensky's trying to get out of war. Why aren't we moving that? Who's blocking that? I mean, if I was President Trump, I'd call Putin and say, let's do Zoom or whatever it is we're going to do, FaceTime, whatever it is, and you got to make sure it's secure, whatever the system you use, with Zelensky. Me, you, and him, and that's it. And we'll sit there and we'll figure out what we're going to do to just bring ceasefire, like a valid ceasefire. We'll say, this is it. I think bringing in observers is appropriate. The United Nations should have dispatched people to Donetsk and all that back when, right? And they should have looked for violation of human rights. Well, I didn't believe the United Nations was complicit. Again, I don't know, because I don't know if CIA or somebody blocked my stuff from being seen. But I sent it to plenty of people, to include the Soviets, the Russians. Right. And on X. And I sent it to the United Nations. And I said, reach out to them, reach out to them, reach out to them. And they didn't do it. And they became colder and blew them off. Because that may have actually stopped it. And then we move in peacekeepers and all that. Well, you can make those. We could cause those regions to be independent regions. Like it's neither Ukraine, and again, that's kind of where it was operating in for quite a few years, but based upon war and that kind of thing. But we could by the United Nations just say, okay, these are independent regions. We freeze everything that's going on, and we're going to investigate this. These are no longer Ukrainian. They're not Russian. They're just an independent territory until we figure this out. And we flood it with peacekeepers. Right. And then we do the UN investigations of human rights abuses. Because I know it went on. I know it happened. Now, you may say Putin caused it to happen. Right. But, I mean, you could even, you could even announce it on via video. And, one of those screens where you got Putin, you got Zelensky, you got Trump in the middle. You wouldn't even have to even travel. That's how simple it is. Because again, the idea is you don't have to negotiate everything to get to a point. Now, Israel's a little different. I think it's a little shakier when you get to that point. I think I think with Ukraine and Russia, you can get to a point of ceasefire where it's, we want to walk off. There's less dogma, less what do they call that? Ideology to fight. Right. I mean, Israel even has ideology that would hinder it. So again, we don't want to let this pass by. We don't want to have people die. Again, I know President Trump means it. He's very busy, but he needs to realize that every day that we wait is a day where somebody could be killed. Right? We don't want people pulled off the street and conscripted. I mean, come on, this day and age, this should not be happening. And they kill me. I can't run the peace things forever when they kill me. Again, I think I'm getting up a little bit now, so I can continue on a little bit better. And they were in here drugging me. There was no doubt, and they wanted me to know they were in. I'm sure Jonathan Luna was drugged, surreptitiously drugged. They drugged me quite a few times. I can't believe I made it. I mean, blessing of God is really what did it. Again, my life's horrible, but it would have been much worse. I went. A couple contractors got me to go to lunch. I don't know if they're part of it. Female contractors in Baltimore. I took one bite of my food, and I know it was drugged. There's no doubt it was drugged. It wasn't bad food. I was drugged. And then I said that, but what they didn't figure is at that point, because again, they isolated me, so they didn't know how I would act in a social environment, really. So they said, I said, I got to go. My food's bad. Like most people, I haven't had interaction with women because they were isolating me for a long period of time. So most people would have, jumped at the chance and stayed there and ate their food and gone crazy. I took one bite and I'm like, whoa. And then I went back to the courthouse and there was this guy yelling at me when I talked to him about the bad food that I had been friends with, work friends. You see him, you take care of him, right? He's cordial with you, right? Thank you, Larry. One of the incidents that may have caused an issue, but this is the weird part. So there's this DEA guy that's in a hospital, and I had to go bring him. I think I had to bring him back to the courthouse so the DA could pick him up. The DA, prisoner or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. Right? And I gave him some gospel tracts. And, court told him about Jesus. But you have to understand, like if you listen to Unshackled, and God chose the agency. Again, God steered some. God didn't cause the event, but revealed these people. If you listen to Unshackled, which is a mission Christian mission program about Christian missions it's about everything Christianity, but it's Christian mission based. There's a mission in like one of the not overseas mission, but the U.S. mission where they have a shelter and all that. The program's been going on. It's a radio show, but it's on the internet. And there's one about a DEA agent, and this guy had a personal relationship with this guy. Right? Again, he ended up pleading guilty, helping the government, and then when he got out of prison, the DEA agent visits him in prison, and then when he got out of prison, because the DEA agent was Christian, I think, and he may have led the guy to Christ. Right. So then he set up a life for him afterwards. So they stayed friends. Me, I just gave this guy a track and moved on. I never, had any type of relationship with any of them. So the DEA agents tell my boss, and he handled it well. Pat Minardo handled it well. He said, "You can't befriend them like that." And I wasn't befriending them. I was just being, giving them the track. So they had created this talking point around it. So when I was drugged, walked past that guy. He yelled at me and called me Mr. Friendly. He's like, "You're lucky if that's all that happens to you, Mr. Friendly." Call me Mr. Friendly. Oh, shit. Thank you. Frank from Customs. Right. And I took care of that guy like nobody else in that court. I took care of people like nobody else in that courthouse. Right. Thanks, Larry. So, there's a link, a nexus to possibly that. But you see how they blow it out of proportion. But yet, this DEA guy's famous on a radio show that most Christians at one point or another listen to Unshackled. Right? If it still exists, I don't know. Right? Because he actually befriended the guy. I just gave him gospel tracts. What we used to do, Jim Spicer and I'd get used to be cassette back then. They had CDs, but we had cassettes from my preacher. And I get the cassette from the sermon, and I drive down the road with like 3 thugs in the back, and that's what we'd be playing on the in the vehicle. I don't say anything first. They said something, and then I respond. Right. Although that guy did give the gospel tract. He was in a bad way, you know. He's coming out of the hospital. Correct. Again, that makes it easier to get them to help us too. Even and if they are helping us, they feel better about helping us. Right. But Pat Menard never touched religion. Didn't touch religion when he spoke to me. And I just said okay, and I never gave gospel tract to anybody ever again in the government. Right. But again, here's this DEA agent that I knew about, from Unshackled, that had this long relationship with a criminal. So again, they make up stories and all that. Yeah, probably Rick Henry, probably talking in their ears every chance he could about me, right? Physically, Rick Henry should have been in prison. So one of the things about Rick Henry was that the other guy that I worked with, the assistant I have in the court security work and the judicial security work, because I didn't just do court security. There was somebody, Karen Shelton was assigned judicial security, and she wouldn't do it. I would end up doing it. So again, if you look, I'm just the court security guy, which is generally court security officers, physical security equipment. That's my side job. Now it's not a side job. Back then it was a side job. But I would also do the judicial security investigations. And the other guy did one with me. And actually, we had to interview that one guy. The guy that said Quayle smoked marijuana. Right. He had something with one of our judges. So him and I went out to a prison and interviewed that guy while he was in prison. But that's when he told me about Ukraine and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I never even thought anything about it back then. But then Ukraine came up. I'm like, and that's maybe why he really was in prison. I believe that was why he was targeted. He had ties to Ukraine and oil in Ukraine. So he jumped into Ukraine early on, once the wall came down and all that. And then he ended up in prison. And of course, somebody else was working the contracts after that. Put them out and put themselves in. I can't tell you the issue with the judge. That would be restricted information. But I ended up doing a lot of the judicial security investigations also. Starting at 1.5 years in. And one of the guys got pissed off because like these people they're just like shitty. And they really don't do their job. And they're always trying to hit on women. Or go to the gym and that's it. Right. But they got pissed off because I got that job. And I'm thinking, I had nothing to do with getting the job. They put me in for it. I would just do the work because my partner had that job. My first partner in the Marshal Service was the court security guy. So he showed me how to do it, and I did his work. And then he left, and they gave it to me just like part-time. Like I wasn't, just, hey, do this, which they did throughout my Marshal Service career because nobody else does anything. Like I watched Karen Shelton tell the chief she was not going to do a judicial investigation. She just walks off and said she's going to make phone calls. So she has dirt on people. She extorted people right in front of me. I never said anything to anybody when I was in the Marshal Service about it. She was extorting everybody in the office that if they made her do her job, a judicial security investigation, because she carried that additional duty, the side job, that she would make phone calls about people. She should have been fired. But again, everybody's afraid that she's going to make phone calls. And she's the person that had sex with people. I've had deputies tell me that she tried to have sex with them. But she's like she reels you in. Once you have sex with her, then she owns you. But this is a model that replicates itself all across the Marshal Service, all across the FBI, all across DHS. Once you have sex with them, they own you. So again, the Me Too model is a little skewed when you get to the government. Yeah, they shouldn't have sex with an underling or a regular employee when they're supervisors, but the underling is working the boss. They're grifters. The boss has sex with the woman or sex with the dude, and then they own them. And that's why they're allowed to do this shit to me and everyone else. You'll find a lot of lesbian women will have sex with a male boss just to use that over the male boss. No, they happen to be lesbian. I didn't make them lesbian. I didn't make them do that. So don't try to put it back to me. You see how that it's my fault for saying lesbian. There's lesbian women out there hanging out with young girls as bait girls. And I'm supposedly trying to do something to get them away from me. What are you fucking doing? This never happened in my life. I don't want them around me. They probably have sex more than I do. With you, matter of fact. Copper. See? So again, where do I get this stuff with Elon Musk? I've been around people like him my whole life. In fact, we have some in government. And he probably already has connections into them. These people and these women and guys, and they always get these private sector jobs over in social media, over in SpaceX. Right? And if you want money, you'll do what we say. Yeah, right. They'll all land in hell when they go to the afterlife. Oh, but we all go to church. That's kind of shit they do. Line themselves up with a church. They go on Christmas. They go on this day. And they're the Christians, right? Now we're down to social Christians. Elon's a social Christian. Did he ever say the name Jesus at all? Or we'd accept Rabbi Yeshua ben David? Did he ever utter that word, that name? But he's a social Christian. And I'm a what? I'm a sinner, right? Of course, I'm a sinner saved by grace. See, that's the key. When you ask somebody who they are, if they say they're a sinner, then they're okay. Because the Bible tells you that if you say you're not a sinner, or that you don't sin, then you're a liar. So again, back to so I'll get back to that. So I drove home and drank a ton of water, and I only took one bite. So they loaded it up. They wanted me gone. That's where they went wrong. They put too much in there. Because essentially, if they put a lower level, you might eat it all before it hits you. Then when it hits you, you're 3 sheets to the wind. I took one bite and it hit me. They put too much in. Correct. They work for Dynacor. I knew there was something up with the contractor shit. Seized assets, Dynacor people. Contractors. That's how they moved the deep state in. Contractors. The last thing government wants is to hire all these contractors. But it was a plan to take over the government. Bush plan to kill Jonathan Moon. Try to kill Larry. I was the next one on the list to kill. That's really what it was. And you see, the part I didn't know back then is they're enriching to kill you. So they were going nuts. When they killed out Doug Bettman, they got money. They got ups in life. When I left, the names that became inspectors and stuff, nobody's. Useless people to the Marshal Service. But they were part of the effort that killed me. Not everybody, of course, but they were all promoted to shut up and just move on in the deep state, hopefully, is what they had hoped. Johnny Hughes was deep state. That's why they put him in. If we'd have got that guy that was a Baltimore County Police Union guy, and of course had been a detective and all that, none of that would have happened. Worst thing in the world was that guy got in there. Jim Spicer, of course, doesn't talk about people. He's a good man when it comes to that. But he hinted about Johnny Hughes. Right. Just me knowing that you were having trouble could save you from the deep state being able to kill you completely. There were state troopers even on my roster to call for special, some special assignment, some contractor work that would tell me that they couldn't do the work because this was happening in internal affairs, and then you'd see them like a couple months later because I'd heal it. Again, I never speak about myself, but I have to because there's so many people speaking against me. The Lord says told me I have to do it. He says he knows what the scripture says, but you have to speak about yourself because they're speaking falsely about me. So what happens is I'm psychic. So I started a discussion about questioning these lesbian cops. Again, it's Satan. I was one of the guys that didn't discriminate against lesbians in the government, right? And gay people. Thank you, Larry. So again, they present something where I have to speak about it, right? And then say I'm against lesbians. But no, I treat them very fairly. There was one that worked in our district, and I don't know why she got mad at me. Again, they may have worked her against me. I don't know. But she like yelled at me one day. I'm just looking at her like, what? We were on a special assignment together protecting a judge. And she yelled at me. I'm like, look at her, what? Maybe just a bad day. Because I was totally fair to all of them, Back then, it wasn't fair, right? I took pride in being fair to people. Maybe that's the correctional officer. Be fair and consistent. Still remember that. So I'm looking at these people and I'm thinking, hey, you're hanging out with bait girls. I'm not around little girls. You're bringing them around me. I could walk into a store with like a 20-year-old and they'll instantly act like I'm trying to hit on the 20-year-old when there's no indication. Right? I'm just minding my own business in my own world. But I started speaking about these lesbian cops that I found strange were always hanging out with young bait girls. And some of the cops started sending me blips inside, and they said, you know what? They touch them a lot. They hug them. They're touchy-feely all the time, very unprofessional. That's the point. I watch people in churches, and I just like, I can't believe that guy's all over that young girl. It's not even his daughter. I won't say nothing. I'm not like that. Or I wasn't like that. Right. But then they try to insinuate, and I've never gone near anybody's daughter, ever. I don't touch your daughter. I barely touch my daughter. I'm just not going to touch people. If my wife ever wants to give me sex again, I'll touch her. That's about it. So yeah, it's a live world. But now you can see it's coming to fruition. A lot of these preachers and church people that are getting arrested for sex crimes, they used to not get arrested, but they're deep state, so they no longer have the cops are no longer covering. When they weren't deep state, they would cover them a little bit. Again, it's dangerous, but that's the way the world used to work. Again, when I was a kid, nobody got arrested, right? Or practically nobody. But these are the people that I used to see in the church, and they were covered by the deep state. So a lot of them just committed sex crime all the way through. And then finally now it's starting to get prosecuted. So again, all these people that were trying to push me into a sex crime and insinuate and tell people bullshit, they were the ones that were protecting the real sex criminals. Well, that's what it was about killing John. That, you only investigate and you only arrest the sex criminal they tell you to arrest. And it's to the point that you could not be a sex criminal and they put a case on you. That's how you make big money in that world. No, I think the one thing with Kojikeri, Madalena Kojikeri, the one thing with that is we don't have a lot of cameras where Diana Kojikeri went in North Carolina. I guess she went in the mountains or something. And that, I've told you for years that's where you need to put the cameras because that's where they put the bodies. But again, that's a sign of corruption when they don't put that program into place because they put the bodies there. So if somebody, they don't like closing the loop where somebody can't get away with a crime because they want to get away with crimes at times. The deep state, right? Now I already know it's 100%. So what's happening is you have these cops. So what does it do? What is the mindset? The mindset is that's the victim or that's the target, but it's a victim, and you use your stuff on the victim, and that's it. And I already brought up that when you take a young girl and she thinks she's baiting a man, it's just like trans, inappropriate influence, because you're causing her to want that. But who knows where her mind goes? Even it could. I even brought up that it could even cause sexuality, and wanting her to project sexuality, just to be able to arrest somebody. So again, it's a very, very dirty world. So what they do is they tell everybody your alleged crime, but what it is, it's how you direct the will and the spell. So if they put everybody on the same sheet of music, then everybody's willing the same thing. So when that plane went down, it has a connection to DC, a Wichita connection to DC, or a Kansas connection to DC. Again, God trying to show you that you're not supposed to do what you're doing to anybody. So again, like a cop will call, and nobody thinks that the cop's corrupt or you don't care. Which one is it? Because if you had my capabilities, they would be calling about you. In fact, the key to putting a deep state person is that the deep state person can't do anything. They're useless to the mission. And they're beholden to a system that only gives them if they're corrupt. So you take the person out that can actually do the job, a lot of things happen. In other words, narcotics, additional. If somebody in your agency can just say, their narcotics is coming in on that road, and then you find it, they don't want that person. And I've had that capability. So when I was in the Marshal Service, I didn't know anything. And we had this guy, what was his name? George Cunningham. And he may have been a Harford County officer or a city officer, but he was on our task force, and he had that capability. I didn't know what it was. He'd look at a piece of paper, like a warrant, and he'd look at like 3 of them, and then he'd say this one. But there's like no information but the charging document. So I never knew what it was. I never knew that existed. But then when I woke up, I had that type of capability. But I was already out of the Marshal Service, or on my way out of it. Yeah, I think I did get like some information while I was still in the Marshal Service. Like I remember sitting in my apartment, and a spirit, again, ended up being Ronald Reagan. A spirit led me to my, like, the paperwork on retirement, or actually the pay paperwork, and it actually would tell you if you retire right now, this is how much money you'll make, and it pointed to it through my hand. So I was waking up, and I always had an uncanny ability. I didn't know because other people knew, but I just thought it was obvious what I was saying. Now, they weren't allowed to do what they did. And they used special operators and all sorts of people, spies. CIA was there. So what they did is, after 9/11, which really does, I believe 9/11 wasn't what they wanted, but they wanted something to allow them to go out into the community like they did and kill who they want to kill. Right. So CIA was tasked with figuring out, again, the government workforce, who's corrupt. But, they weren't doing that. Right. They're just making up cases so they could kill people. So CIA got an unlawful in that you'll never read about anywhere. Right. See if anybody was working for Al Qaeda. They were there to rat out Al Qaeda, but it's the cover story. They were there to kill people because their people got arrested. So they went through they got authority to go through the federal workforce. And what they did is, if they believed that you would be corrupt, they kept you. But again, these people aren't stable. So it's like, I was a guy that would do what I was told. I would never ask to commit a crime. It was insinuated I should commit a crime, or at least on something unethical, but I never did it. I thought I was doing the right thing because I was like, okay, I did the right thing. I didn't. But no, they wanted you to step over the line and be corrupt. You think it's a test the other way. So they didn't want any more Aldrich Ameses. They didn't want any more Hanses. Because the only way, I didn't study Aldrich Ames as much, but the only way Hansen could have made it that far was that he was deep state. Hansen was deep state. There's no way to, if you're not deep state, there's no way you'd have the cover to do that. That's where the cover comes from. Right. And probably Aldrich Ames was most likely deep state. Because they know that they're actually shown that they can commit a crime against another person and not have a worry in the world. So that's probably why when the internal affairs thing came back, the internal affairs thing has actually caused me to stay another 6 months. There was an internal affairs on 2 people in the office, and I brought them up. Right? And they went at each other. 2 deep state people went at each other. So they ended up with an internal affairs investigation. They slowed down and they stopped a lot of the harassment. As soon as that thing came back, no further action, they hit me again. Both of them. And that's when God pulled the chute. All right, we're out of here. Call the chief in the morning. And then I called the chief the next morning. And they had options. They could either continue to play the game or you get honest and we could work it out. Right. They played the game. You either admit that this is happening to me or act like I'm crazy and I'm out of here. Right. Again, I didn't design it. God did. I was just doing what God told me or inferred in my mind. Again, I didn't have that deep relationship. I mean, I had a relationship like everyone else, and I was beginning to receive messaging. Right. Like the I and the Father are one relationship. The Enoch walks with God relationship. I didn't necessarily have that back then, or at least have that available to my present mind. Well, you can be one with the Father and not, again, I'm a son of God. I don't have a problem with saying it. You just don't understand what Jesus was saying because you're all ignorant, spiritually ignorant. Right. I and the Father one. Enoch could say that. So that's kind of like an Enoch relationship. Thank you. But he's a son of God. I mean, he's a the terminology I use that Hashem gave me early on, he was a manifesting son of God. And then something said, if you read the scripture, it doesn't say that he will be the only son of God forever either. Up until that point. Again, if you read the scripture, it tells you anybody that believes will be a son of God. Well, actually, no, it doesn't say that. It says he has been given to make people the son of God. So again, if you know Ben Elohim and you study it like that, it begins to make sense, right? He has the power to make to elevate somebody to Ben Elohim. That's what it says about Rabbi Yeshua ben David. They don't understand what they're reading because they didn't know nothing about spirituality. It really could care less. A lot of it's just big basis, right? And deep state type stuff. I mean, at least I wasn't crucified in 3 years. I did a little better, didn't I? It's 20 years later. Actually, from when they started, it's probably 30 years, 40 years. Oh my gosh. Greater work shall you do. No, I'm inside changing the whole world. And CIA knows that. And I'm changing it for the better. So, but they want wars. Again, Trump knows that. They're mad because I can stop a war. Not as much money to embezzle when there's no war. Not enough cover story. Right. I was just so happy to be awake and know about healing. And I just went about. So that when I was driving all over the place, that's what I was doing. Now it was very hard because they had hit me with drugging and stuff like that. So I was trying to maintain. Again, they take you through this thing where you're not going to readily speak about anything. And it took me years to begin to speak about it. Now, you've arrested people that are victims of them, and they won't tell you because what are they going to do? Right? You're just going to say they're crazy. Right? But I was in the Marshal Service. When I was in the Marshal Service, I didn't know anything. So I would have believed I was crazy. Like I told you, I thought my wife was crazy. But then when they hit me, I'm like, she was telling the truth. But again, she had become so far gone that I couldn't be part of her life. And I was happy when she found a boyfriend. I wasn't wanting to hurt her at all. Right. But it's just, they made me the other in her life. The othering. They made me the target of her anger. They'd bang in a hang up call. Right. And she'd freak out on me. And they knew it. Well, basically, they issue us Nextels that they could listen through. Did you know that? That was part of it. When they gave us those Nextels after 9/11, it was so they can listen in. They use them as listening devices. You'll never read that anywhere, but that's what they used it for. They showed me that they were using it for that. Again, God moved some things so that they would do that, right? And then I knew that they were using it. So post 9/11, they issued us all those Nextels. Marshal Service was cheap until all of a sudden you should have suspected it, right? All of a sudden, everybody gets Nextels, brand new Nextels. All right. Well, it was put a listening device in your life. That's what it was for. For eavesdropping. You go home, they listen to what happens in your house. They're freaks, man. They hack into our camera systems from the government. They don't care. It's all deep state. Our security systems that you have in your house, they're watching your wife if they want to. They don't care. They'll watch your wife naked all they want. Or your husband naked. Or your kids naked. What they would do is, when I would have a conversation, they would buzz the Nextel in response to it. I never told Jim that. I told Jim some other stuff. I never told him that part. Got have a conversation with them. They're going buzz, 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 buzz. And there's nothing on the phone. So they can make the phone do whatever they wanted. No, it was only my phone. It was your phone, too. Thank you, Larry. And then I had to tell the investigator in the Luna thing, I was in the gym and they buzzed my Nextel. Now, they may have been thinking they were helping me by letting me know there was a wiretap in the gym, but I'm not supposed to know that, okay? I mean, especially after Luna's dead, you're not supposed to buzz my Nextel and say anything unless you're going to speak to me directly. Right. What they did is they repeated my last words on the phone. I wasn't worried. I didn't need to know there was a wiretap. I wasn't selling steroids. I was telling some guy where to buy Andro at GNC. That's about all it was. Right. Absolutely legal. But they get on there and they repeated my last words on the phone to let me know it was a wiretap. But again, how do I know what they're doing? This is how law enforcement's built. You have to write up something on that. And I don't know if I wrote up something, but I told the investigator in the Luna thing, I said, look, something strange happened to me in the gym. Right. Well, because then I'm part of it. If I don't tell them, they compromise the wiretap. I mean, if you want to walk up to me and say, be careful in the gym, there's a wiretap, we're trying to figure out who killed John, then fine. I wouldn't tell anybody because you had a conversation with me. How do I know what you're doing? I don't know what you're doing. I know that's probably what you were doing. Thank you, Larry. And in fact, they may have been doing something dirty. They can feel uncomfortable about reaching out to somebody and being nice and saying, here, don't buy steroids, buy Andro. It's legal. And it's a lot less, it's not as harsh on the body. No, that's not why my back's messed up. Not at all. Right. Again, I didn't use steroids. I used a little bit of Andro. And again, when you get 30 years old, they recommend that you use something. Right? And most of what I use was natural. Plant stuff, not even Andro. Right. In fact, that actually was keeping me healthy. Oh, again, if I'd have got massages from Santa Fe on, none of this would be happening. I'd have maybe a slight disability, right? Very slight. But again, they played their game out and won. Well, you're all going to hell. You win in hell. That's fine. So again, I never understood hell and how it worked. It didn't make any sense to me until I met these people. Until these people kept in my life past certain points where other people would pull off and say, no, we don't go there. Right. Rick Henry's going to hell. Karen Shelton's going to hell. No, the scriptures are very specific about certain types of sin that is unforgivable. And again, it also says, how is somebody culpable? Where does the line of culpability begin? Been given much. That's part of it. But again, that is variable. Causing another to fall, that's it. Do these people walk around all day causing people to fall, but because they say Jesus Christ 3 times a week, they're okay, right? Or they go to church for holidays with their family in the car the deep state paid them with to kill 7 people. It's, like I said, this is the epitome of it. When I was in the government, and I even spoke to some mafia people, they would say they're just another government. I'm like, that don't make sense. I mean, I can see what you're saying, but it don't make any sense. But what I didn't know is that the deep state existed and all its corruption. So what they were actually saying was the government is simply another mafia. It's not that the mafia, because that's not being a government. So it's not that the mafia, although they were similar in that they were criminal organizations, organized crime, racketeering, that type of thing. They weren't another government, because that's not government. What it is, the government's another mafia. And that's still true today. Until we work it out. They're willing me to curse you right now. They're just so beside themselves that I'm not saying F you and all that. Oh, at an extremely high rate. I mean, Satan himself is standing there with them. It's not going to be sunny today. It's the only sadness, but it's going to be warm. The sun's good for you, but you can still get some sun on a cloudy day. Looks like it's rain. It says rain. It looks like it rained. That's kind of it shouldn't melt real nice. We still got snow. It's like ice cubes out there because it stayed so longer. Usually, like in Kansas and every other place, it melts pretty quick. Santa Fe now in the shade. If you have a shade side of the building, it would never melt. It would take forever. So hopefully you pay me. If you pay me my back, my back money for disability, would be the quickest way to get to me. Actually, not. I mean, you could have me win a contest or something. It's probably the quickest. But you could do that in an instant. I'd get out of here, go play someplace warm, probably, because I'm just getting older, and it just probably makes more sense to go someplace warm. Unless I had, if I had money, maybe I'd, actually I can't go to those places because of the greenery, right? Too much greenery. Right? Well, I had to get out of Santa Fe because it was actually metaphysical at that point. Cucking, they were cucking me metaphysically, but they had done, what happens is they try to cuck you physically, and then metaphysical cucking picks up. So Satan rewards them with that satanic power or anti-power of sexually affecting another person, or attempting to, at least. That's why you don't let them in people's lives, man. So we had some deputies that committed suicide, based upon sex crime and that kind of stuff, right? Pornography, whatever it was. I knew, and they knew I knew what was going on. So after that happens, what happens? The Marshal Service gets the big sex crime task force. Why? Because deputies put the other person into it and successfully operated a person into a sex crime, CIA style. That's a scam. Yeah, they could care less, let us rot in hell if they hated us because we worked so hard. So for all those years, the reality is because we worked so hard, because we were so honest in the work, they minimized our reach. Right. Now, I don't think you're rewarded for anything decent. Right. No, because when other agents were going home, we were still out there on the street, that kind of thing. Other agencies. We pushed through. That's probably why they came in and tried to limit who was available to the service. Trying to tell me I'm telling on myself. Bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Now you'll tell somebody that you psychologically analyze what I said and it actually means this. Mr. Friendly, you understand? It means this. So again, if you know anything about Rick Henry and Karen Shelton, they'll lie all day. So what's happening is people were spreading rumors that weren't true based on something that, like giving somebody a gospel tract. Like, I'm friendly to the point of being corrupt. They can't get any real incidents, so they make some bullshit up. Right. When in fact, Karen Shelton, there were so many allegations that she was too friendly with prisoners in a kind of man-woman way. Right. They were always bringing shit to me to try to get me in on it. I just push them away. I don't want to talk about that, Right. We had a lot of comment that came through that place, and she showed a weakness. But yet she's the one probably, see, that's why they would make it up about me, because it's true about them. And of course, everybody knows Rick Henry's corrupt. It's federal, state, and local. At the time, I thought it was only the feds, but then I figured it out. Well, I knew some of the officers were disgruntled because I wouldn't bring their lazy asses in every day to sit in a chair and just do nothing. So we had details. We bring in like maybe 3 to 8 officers along with deputies or whatever the makeup was. Right. And everybody bought Jim Spicer in, but see again, the other ring. It's okay that everybody else brought in Jim Spicer because he worked his ass off. Right. But it wasn't okay that I did it because they could use it against me and brought in some officers. I know some of the Baltimore County officers. There's a state trooper. He probably went far in the state police. He was one of Hughes's men. Turned out to be a dirty piece of shit. Because again, I'm in the martial arts. I'm not knowing what these people are doing around me. But when I get out, I wake up and I go back and figure it all out. I don't remember what his name is, but he's dirty. Black hair. Remember that. This devil casts spells on people. And then he runs around back to Hughes. Then Hughes takes care of his state trooper career. For all I know, he became a deputy. I don't know. Who knows what Hughes did? So Hughes promotes all those people out of the office, and he could have been bringing in his people from the state police, the corrupt people. Right. Well, I mean, they were killing people in the state police. I mean, Hughes was a murderer, man. That's how he got there. Got other law enforcement officers commit suicide for the deep state. The CIA plan. This is what the CIA develops in our country: the ability to kill law enforcement officers. Why? Because they're criminals. And if they commit a crime in the CIA, they think that person's going to. Again, at a certain point, it's just a power trip, which means they'll just tell that story. Of course, they tell a different story, but they're killing out people that they believe would investigate and arrest them, because Hansen and Ames would arrest. They were deep state. So they violated the deep state ethic and actually launched an investigation. Like in the deep state, their mindset says, you take an innocent person and kill them, but another person, such as Hughes and Hansen, because they're, or not Hughes, Hansen and Ames, you actually tell them just to stop. Like that's the answer. Like stop, they're watching you, that's it. Right. So when the officers or the agents actually arrested Ames and Hansen, instead of taking that lesson and stopping all the bullshit, they said they have to get control of that mechanism, the investigative mechanism. They tried to put Cheney in, but I think Cheney was a red herring. They tried to say that Dick Cheney, it was the investigation that Luna was working on had ties to Dick Cheney and his people or something like that, or Republicans. And it may have been Republicans, but I think that was a red herring. Like, what they'll do is they'll put the conspiracy theory out there that they want you to fall in line with. No, it's definitely related to some case. It's not because John Luna was a piece of shit. It's related to some case he was working. But yet, everybody else was a piece of shit. So, yeah, you do John Luna, you get paid. You get promoted, you get new money, you get stock options. Like in the government, for the corrupt people, there are stock options, but the CIA rewards you, or some entity similar. Sends you a message, you invest, because it's got the code in it. Right. And the next thing you know, you got $1 million out of 100,000. Right. There's insider trading everywhere because the deep state engages in it and puts their people in to that particular stock before they're ready to raise it up. The insider, they all buy into that stock around the same time and it goes up. And, they might get a government contract, or even they could actually put a private sector contract together. I mean, that's how Elon Musk was made. Elon Musk was made by some spies. I don't know which ones. Because he has the personality they were looking for. Rick Henry type of personality, Karen Shelton type of personality. Right. So they first tried in the government and it worked. They had orchestrated a takeover of government with it. Right. And of course, it was also in the private sector. See, I've been around people like Elon for years. Like, as soon as Elon hit the government, just like Karen Shelton, just like Rick Henry, just like all the pieces of shit that were part of the deep state. What Elon's trying to do to the government worker, and the senators, you need to be careful siding with him. You lost a lot of respect from government workers. Now, if you think you're gonna muscle us, it's not gonna work. Again, I'm retired. There is no possible way that 94% of the government is sitting at home in a robe and slippers eating bonbons on their personal computer. You just, in Soviet style, in KGB style, distorted the facts. Granted, the FBI, DHS, and there's other people, but I'm going to start with them. Marshal Service, Justice Department people do not spend 40 hours a week sitting their fat ass in the office in front of a computer. Like techie people. Elon Musk isn't even capable of reading the pay codes. And he's going to tell us what everybody's doing? It's virtually impossible. Like I told you, they're including people that took 1 hour every week to do some mission outside the office. There are some people that spend 39 hours in the office. They spend 1 hour to go do something outside the office for the government. It's like Trump. I know it's impossible. They just, any code that doesn't say sitting in the office, they said meant that they weren't in the office. Or the inference is that they're sitting at home eating bonbons in their robe. I don't think the government changed all that much. There are people that just sit there all day working, and they work past out, like overtime. They don't get paid for it. Right? I mean, in the judges' chambers, I work overtime for free. They work overtime for. I see them there, 7 o'clock at night. No, we're not the 6%. I'm sure it's much larger than that. Judges, clerks, they work all sorts of crazy hours. See, I'm trying to tell you that the judges aren't going to take this lightly because they know they're working a lot of hours. They know their clerks are working a lot of hours. And that's the other thing. It's military is built the same way because there's very little extra compensation. If you work a trial and you work from, let's say, 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, or maybe even 9 o'clock, because you're putting extra hours to do all paperwork and whatever it is, transporting people, whatever it is. Once the trial, and you do that for 2 months or 3 months, once the trial's over, you're going to get some relief because you need to decompress. So you may see like 80-hour weeks and then drop down to what looks like they're screwing off, but they're not. Right. Because we don't have stock options. We don't get big pay packages. In fact, if we want the case to go to fruition, we have to come in for free. Right. If we're a lot of different cases, but if we're out on the street looking for a fugitive. So somewhere along the line, you might look like the deputy screwing off, but a deputy just spent 3 weeks looking for 5 homicide suspects. Right. And I mean, they're burnt to a crisp. They need that time to re-energize. There's no way they know how to read any of that paperwork, even in that sense. Let be what the codes mean. I mean, you're insulting people that spent, like even me. They insult me all the time on the computer. You might not see it, maybe you see it. They code it. Right. I spent 20 years not getting paid helping the government. Just now. Last 20 years. Probably more than that now. Probably 21 years. My retirement's not payment for that. That retirement was earned and actually should have had $1 million on top of it. But I agreed to walk off. 100%. That's not payment for what I'm doing now. In fact, you actually owe me because you never stopped the abuse. And I'm not lying. I was on the FBI website and I heal people. That's what I do. By then I knew it, right? Probably 2006 or 7, something like that. And I find the Special Agents Association. Because they're trying to get me to be anti-government, and I'm still, I knew FBI people in the government. And they're nice to me, I was nice to them. Well, some, at least. Right. Like normal people. We tried to have a normal government, Larry. They wouldn't let us. So I see, all these people, they're asking for leave, but it's listing what their illness is and what's going on. So 24 hours later, I can't get in. I try to go back to do the healing again. Well, meanwhile, they're telling everybody, they're trying to find private stuff out about it. See, that's how they do it. I'm out there healing the FBI agent online because I find that they need leave. They're asking for leave because they have an illness or a family member has an illness or whatever it is. And I'm healing that. So I go back 24 hours later, I'm shut off from it. I'm like, those son of a guns. But meanwhile, they're telling everybody, he's trying to find out private stuff about us or something like that. Thank you, Larry. Well, they destroyed my wife. They destroyed my kids. They destroyed my mother as far as in relationship with me. Destroyed my health. All I had to do was stay away from me. Couldn't even do that. Or Kennedy's part of it. Karen Shelton's part of it. Chief Quick's part of it. Hughes is part of it. No doubt. Absolute organized crime effort. That's just stay away from me. You even knew that if I ever figured out it was you, that this would be coming at me. So you ran deception operations, make me think maybe it was my mother's fault, maybe it's this person's fault. Back when? Again, this is what the government's doing all day. They're supposed to be what? Stopping the narcotics, right? But again, it's not all the government. That's why people like that will make a deal with a narcotics distributor in a second because they're immune from prosecution, immune from investigation. See, now the deputy sheriff doesn't matter, but if you get a badge from the sheriff because you're a rich person and you're playing some game, now you matter. But deputy sheriff doesn't matter. Government employee don't matter because Elon says you're lazy pieces of shit. Because he's actually the specialist in government operations. Because he slept on a line while people built electric cars. While you slept, if you're military, you know where. Do you see how that shift? The great replacement theory, Elon's projected, even though that does probably exist. They're part of the same thing. For now, we're not going to, replace it with immigrants. We're going to replace it with techies. The heroes of this nation are the techies. They've been trying that one for decades. That's why they killed Jonathan Luna, to move that forward. Again, every person they get to commit suicide, every person they kill, if they physically killed him, and they did psychologically kill him at least, is another use of force to say, hey, you don't investigate us. And you investigate that person over there even though they're innocent. So while they're killing me, they're recruiting and indoctrinating and teaching people spycraft. You imagine how they taught Karen Shelton spycraft. They taught Rick Henry spycraft. That just shows you what it's about. They were moles in our agencies. Or deep state. They murdered, man. I knew they were murdering. I knew they would get remunerated. Again, you're not always going to get promoted. Like some people just want to sit in the office and do nothing. That's what they get. Great. Whatever you want. So like people would say, like, what is it, F up, you move up. It's not really that. Kill someone for the government and they'll promote you. That's really it. Now again, some people can get promoted without that. I spent 2 years in Kansas. The entire time they psychologically harassed me and psychologically tortured me. 2 years. Do you think maybe God said, okay, 2 years is enough? Do you think that's what's happening with the tuberculosis and everything? Actually, that started a year ago. But again, when did it become known? And probably when did it start moving out of control? I had been here a year. When I was here a year, it started. So after they harassed me a year, psychologically tortured me, enriching themselves, went to the clubs, had sex over it, had sex parties over it, including law enforcement, including state police, including government officials, including narcotics distributors, sex traffickers, all one big happy family of hellish Satanism. While they go to church and say, praise the Lord. God began the tuberculosis here in Kansas. And God even got it to, I'm surprised, because God doesn't own this planet, but God even got it in a specific geographic area. Now we're at 2 years and it's getting much bigger in it. And y'all still didn't learn. Well, don't win me out of massage, because that's one of the things that's powering it. See? Well, I don't know what to do. Pretty dangerous to sit in a room with somebody for an hour at this point. at least in Johnson County and Winnedoke County, the two culprits. There's a Jewish guy, Fred Karp. Now, he isn't me. I was a super troop. But Fred Karp, they dogged him, and then he had back trouble when his leg was messed up when I was leaving the Marshal Service. So that's how I know for a fact they know what they do does. Right. Well, I never knew what, like when I was in, like what was his name? Jim Morsey used to take medicine. And they'd be disrespectful to him, but he had a nervous condition. He was an MP in Vietnam. I don't even know if any of them knew that. Yeah, they wouldn't want to know anything about Jim. They'd want to harass him and laugh. He was an MP in Vietnam. Vietnam War. Now they want us to believe that that's what did it. No, they did it. They did Karp. They did Orsi. They did that one inspector. I don't even remember his name that Fogg brings up. They're sick, man. They got the sickness. Of course, Elon will shoot a Zig Heil. He's got the sickness. The deep state sickness. Now, if you don't, you prove it to us. But you're looking deep state to me. Setting up an assassination of government employees to put their cronies in. Again, Project 2025 is innocent until it's corrupt. Not here to play games. Told you that. Trump doesn't even know what they're doing. It'll ruin everything. These are do-nothing slugs that can't do anything right. Right now, because of deep state, most likely deep state people that are on the conservative side, he's looking at court cases down the road, and Bonnie's looking at court cases down the road. They never should have had a fight. Because you're too busy with everything else. You don't need to be fighting bullshit cases that we can avoid. I'm telling you, you play their game, and you're going to be so encumbered with law. You're going to be done within 2 years. You'll be done. It'll be over. You'll be screaming that it's unfair. The deep state's trying to take you down with court cases and independent investigators and impeachments. If you want to have like a powerful 2 years and that's it, fine. Keep going the direction you're going. I mean, you're going to reign for 40,000 years. I mean, is that where you're at, all of you? There's a mandate. What's the mandate? Obviously, you're not meeting that mandate because they hate you now. and I know you're not meeting the mandate. Now, again, Cash isn't in there yet, but you got to stop these cops from harassing people in their community. They're going to put it on you. That's what's happening. Dirty cops protecting narcotics distributors and sex traffickers, harassing everyday employees, or everyday, actually everyday employees too, but everyday people in the public. Like when you're in a government, you think, oh, they're just razzing you at first. You're just razzing me and just, go through this and we get the other side someday. Right? No, they kept doing it. Then they flipped the triggers and launched a big attack. So again, now you got to fight tuberculosis. You are the tuberculosis capital of the world. If I were a rich person, I wouldn't move here. You want to move into the tuberculosis capital of the world? Or at least the United States? I'm trying to get out of here. They're rotten, filthy Satanists in reality. Even if they say Jesus 15 times a week and go to church 20 times a week. They're sacrificing their neighbor to Satan. Oh, but who are we sacrificing? The nice people, even if they're not nice anymore. God knows who everyone is, and God knows who you all are. They actually think God's ignorant. And they do it to somebody and then say, God's doing it. It's not a cover story. You all love to say that you're God, right? These are devils, man, that were willed up from hell to reside on this planet because the planet became evil. They'll go back to hell when they're done. And they'll take you with them. No, they're not going to rule you. They'll rule the day they ruled anybody. I can hear their spells. God just showed me one of their spells. Will me go sexual online right now. So they're starting this now. That same person will indicate that that's what the curse is. I don't even have to tell you. And then in 10 years, they'll still be cursing it. That's what cops do all day. Meanwhile, some drug dealer laughing because he got them all working for him, going after the good guy and the good cop. I'd look into those fusion centers if I was Kash Patel and figure out what the hell they're actually doing. I believe they're criminal operations. And I mean, in the sense of that they're an organized crime and racketeering entity. Now, what they'll do is they'll say, but we're doing it for you and everything you want. Right. That's a big number. 4,577 individuals attempting to enter the country illegally, and especially this time of year. Right. Oh, actually, it decreased. Well, this time of the year, it could decrease. But again, oh, yeah, they're not coming across. We know that for sure. Right. So you had 10,000. Geez. Right. Yeah, but they're definitely not. They already interviewed them. Actually, I think it was an interview sympathetic to them, to the people coming across, but it highlighted the fact that they're not going to come here anymore. Right. But you have to be careful. Again, we are moving a psychological operation that has picked up in DHS. Again, I don't know what CIA and NSA are doing, but you have to be careful because they counter that. That's what the surges are. It's a psychological operation, a civil affairs operation that causes them to want to come here. And again, the court cases will pick up. I don't know where they're going to go. Well, the tuberculosis here will help. And I think you can probably trace it, but it's much like immigrants, right? I just don't know if they're going to buy it, how long they'll allow it to go. And well, you got to be prepared for the judge to say no. Right. That's why a lot of stuff I tell you, you might not need, but you have to plan for it and at least start the wheels moving. Quite honestly, I'd have Cav Scouts out there and strikers. Now, that might, again, you have to, okay, let me tell you how to present. You have two missions on the board. You have more than that, but you have two main missions as far as what I'm representing and what I'm saying. So you have the Border Patrol mission, and of course they do defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. But their main mission is the immigrants and people coming across and deporting and all of that, especially when they're surges. You have another mission to defend the United States from enemies, foreign and domestic, militarily. So you see again, it's like a case of chicken. They're making you afraid to militarily protect the border at that level because of what could go wrong or whatever, or the photo, the optics. And again, you could just begin now explaining it. That we have two missions, and one is increasing that normally doesn't increase. But again, we can't let all of this happen to our nation. So you can't back off from the deportation because this is also an issue revolving around the ability to hide narcotics operations, to bring narcotics. When that number of undocumented foreigners increases, it becomes more difficult, one, to find the narcotics, because now you have 30,000 people to look at instead of 5,000 or 10,000. Well, because we know that's where the narcotics are coming from, and those are the communities that it moves through. But again, there are some probably conservative white communities got dirty cops, dirty mayor, and in the middle of off a highway somewhere, and that could be one of their. I believe that they have those. That there are these communities of like conservative people that you never think that they were involved in narcotics distribution, but they got stash houses and stuff in those locations. And you've seen it. So they pull off the highway there, and it's a safe zone. Maybe spend a week there or 2 weeks there, whatever it is. Great. They may have a farm community, and they got it in through the farm agricultural workers. So again, I back agricultural workers, but that's also could be a spot where they move drugs, narcotics. I believe the contractors are moving narcotics at times. So again, within these communities that we accept as being immigrant communities, immigrant-based labor, there is some criminal activity going on. And their money. The big thing is nobody's money adds up, but nobody cares anymore, right? Their money doesn't add up, right? Thank you. And you got you wander it in their business. So you have to explain to the world that if the cartels in Mexico are threatening the United States, that you not only need to protect the officers that are on the border, because again, what you're doing is allowing them to do their job in a safe environment by bringing, let's say, Cab Scouts in with strikers, or again, if you want to use your optics, an MRAP. The M1117, that looks a little bit more docile. Right. I think it's a little smaller. Right. So if they, even before, they have to understand that they need to be protected to do that same job now because they're threats. So the rules of engagement do not allow a Cab Scout to engage an immigrant based upon being an immigrant. Do you see how sticky they're making that it makes it in your mind, but you have to be able to get your mind more powerful and move it away. Right. The rules of engagement is if something were to attack the United States or its officers on the border. Has nothing really to do with coming across the border. That's handled by the Border Patrol and those officers, as well as their augmentees, the military police, and all of that. If you pull the Cab Scout's job is if somebody comes under attack. And again, it's called a show of force, so that won't happen. Right. Well, it's just an idea. You don't just go, oh, Trump caused it because he's deporting people. And he's talking about taking out the cartels. Well, these are the people that are doing what? Doing all this menacing of the United States based upon their activity on the border and within the cities. Narcotics distribution, the trank, the zombies in the streets. That's who's responsible. You can't just let them go just because they say they're going to fight us if we try to take them out. Right. So it has nothing really to do with Trump. It has to do with everybody else that didn't fight them and let them get that big. Thank you, sir. Bless you, sir. So you have to explain to the American public at some point that if we deploy that aspect, which we're just looking at this point, or whatever you want to say, right? It's not to engage immigrants. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with protecting the officers that are engaging immigrants from anything that might attack them for doing their job, such as the cartels. And it's also to repel any cartel attack. you've already come under fire. Now you have to keep it under observation, see if it happens again. Which, just even the thought or the communication of it online could deter them. And if you ask me, we should try an amnesty program if we can. Thank you, Larry. While applying the pressure, you should always put in like Mexico amnesty, where Mexico gives amnesty to certain narcos if they pay a fine. Some of the money has to be put into a government fund to help the people, and then they get a certain. They negotiate what portion of their money. Again, we don't know all that they have. They could be stashing gold bars, but do your best. And the idea is that they have to help with this thing. So they have to. So in other words, let's say it's El Mencho, and again, El Mencho is the worst. I don't know if you want to let him go, but let's say El Mencho. We say now, and if his mind's there, then he can do this. I don't know if he can. Right? El Mencho. I mean, I think El Chapo would have done it. I mean, he could do it. Not that he would have done it, but his mind was well enough to do it. Right? But you take like El Mencho and say, if you stop, if you will help us move all of this forward so there's no more of this narco thing going on, we will allow you to keep a certain amount of your money. You can, and we recommend that you put it into investments and startups, right? And start businesses here, real businesses, and you can't go back, right? They'll be monitored, right? Kind of like a probation. He'll be pretty much put on probation, but he's allowed to have a good life for the rest of his life as long as he helps Mexico move forward. So again, it sounds kind of weird, but like I think I suggested it how many years ago, and we're still here, and it's even worse with fentanyl. When I suggested it, it was like the heroin era, I think, when I first started suggesting it. And now we're in fentanyl. And again, there's nothing to stop other people from picking up, but I think, maybe we might be able to, again, with other operations, we may be able to break that thing. Well, the thing is, if you're fighting El Mencho is going to corrupt government. He's the guy that can corrupt government the best. Got the most reach, the most money. I think he's even affiliated with political parties. I'm not sure, but that's what it seems like to me. So if you take El Mencho and you tell him it's it, and we're going to make this deal, then they lose that big mechanism. They would have to rebuild that. And in the time it takes to rebuild that empire, right, you might be able to overcome it some more, and it may never become that again. Again, remember, fighting the narco in 2007 is different than fighting narco in 2012 and 2015 and today. And also, you have to build, like I said, you have to build military bases for the people that are fighting this. Their whole family has to live there. And you have to provide a life for them on the base. Now, maybe there's times when they could come off base, but that's where the trouble begins. Because you're besieged. Mexico is now under duress. It is under occupation of the narco. So the only way to get out might be to build these bases, and everybody has to live on those bases for 2 years or 3 years, just so they're protected not to be corrupt because they're afraid they're going to be killed or the family's going to be killed. So again, the way it happens is the cop goes to pick up his daughter from the school, and the narcos are there. See? He goes to his mother's to visit her on Sunday. The narcos are there. It's spy. They're using spycraft. Could be the CIA. Could be CIA, former CIA. Maybe even active CIA. We don't know. Somebody gives them the location. Could be a cop. It could be a Mexican CIA. They could be on a wiretap with a cop they're trying to corrupt. Trying to say like they did with me. They're trying to investigate me. Thank you much. And they get the information as to where, okay, Mom, I'll see you on Sunday. I'll be over there to pick up my daughter at 4. And then the cartel gets a call from a cop in Mexico or from an intelligence officer in Mexico telling them, okay, go over here now. He's going to be over there. They do that to me here. See? That's what's going on in Mexico. There needs to be the social programs that the president of Mexico speaks about, but Yeah, you aren't going to win up with only social programs. And maybe she doesn't care because they make so much money, and drug narcotics is the big gross domestic product of Mexico. It's because it is. And I guess Trump's talking about taxing any of the money that they send back. Might be a way to do it. Allow you to locate it a little bit better. Or maybe make them afraid of sending it back. Now I should have met Trump. I saw the sign, but how do you meet Trump? Right. Like 2004. But I was just planning to be like, back then, I was just planning to be like a preacher, or something, or like a yogi. I wasn't planning to like go back into government or do government work. Well, it became apparent that the deep state had foreign help and had narco help and all that, and there was a link. Well, it's funny because really, I was doing some work and I was like investigating what the hell the algorithms were doing and who these people online were and how they were affiliated with the people in the gym that were coming around me and acting like the woman liked me, and I could never seem to get a conversation. So again, I was going through, again, they're trying to make me look like just some freako person that wasn't really trying to get a wife or something. And they still do it, right? But at a certain point, like I said, all of a sudden I wake up a little bit and I'm like, what are we still doing in Iraq and Afghanistan? That doesn't make any sense. I think we're still fighting a major battle. So I said to him, I said, essentially you have to surge. So I was one of the people, again, I'm at least one of the people that recommended the surge. And I said, you get it as clear as you can, and then you pull back, and then you leave like spec ops. But yet you leave so you can return and not look like the occupier. You can't, once you look like the occupier, you lose the psychology. And again, Gant did his best to remove that idea in Afghanistan. Well, but you can't fight it the way you fought it, because you lose it. You lose control of the people wanting you to help them even. Right. And again, with that kind of collateral damage, I didn't know you were doing that. I mean, all them kids killed, all those innocent people, maybe some not so innocent, but yeah, you can't win with it. You have to fight smart battles. You can't just do that. Right, Claire. Well, because if you can get away from it, then you come back and they did it again. Let's go. 82nd Rangers. But if you stay there, then you're the occupier, just occupy it. And again, you probably would have had a lot less collateral damage if we could have just. So you have to throttle it a little bit. You have to kind of cycle it. And I think we did that. That's part of what we did in South America and Central America, I think. Right. And you just rely on spec op units with, and you kind of did that, but it was just already messed up. Again, the deep state's operating and embezzling and everything else. I mean, how do you do anything? The deep state killed Gant. That was a spycraft assassination. Regular. Now they hate people like that because I'm like that. They hate us because they can't do anything. They just lie and steal and cheat and murder and rape and plunder. So they hate us. There was a good chance that Gant was an angel. So you see how the earth tries to do that, how Satan tries to do that. Right. Well, who has power like that on the earth? So God has and it's funny because I'm a sapper angel, if you don't know that. God thinks he's funny. God thinks he's funny. I came down and tried to live my life, and then I started taking down your defenses so God could destroy you. Or you could do the right thing. Again, you have a choice. Well, don't attack me, and I won't defend. Okay. how it works. I came into your community, healing your community. Don't try to change that past like you always do, all of you. Came in here loving your community, healing your community. Right. Again, the scripture tells you to do that. If you New Testament, it's funny, I do it by just nature, natural, but it tells you to, go in there and heal and praise and right. But then if they turn against you, then the curses start. That's what that is. What's it? Luke 12, is it? Which Luke is that? I don't remember what's it's in Luke and it's in Matthew. Jesus curses them and tells his people to curse them. When you take the dust of your feet and wipe it off, that's a curse. And then tell them that, it'll be worse for them than Sodom and Gomorrah. Right. You know why, though? Because they're the ones that actually cause people to be gay. It's a metaphysic. Because you can treat gay people bad, they will it on their enemy. And an enemy's family. But for us as people, it's just happening like everything else, Right. Now, there's no doubt the Justice Department it wants to make certain people gay. There's no doubt. I don't know the method to their madness. They're weird. Thank you, Larry. But it's other people too. They're all into it. One of the things I came up with is that I was this good guy for Jay. I was a mentor, so they could make everybody think that I molested Jay if I were gay. And then, of course, they wouldn't stop it there. They try to make me a gay pedophile. I've already been under that operation. That operation includes spells, man. They're sick. So yeah, they're using all their power or anti-power on this planet to spell people to be gay pedophiles and shit. But they're come along and tell you they're specialists and everything, and they know the psychology. Fools for the devil.